we apparently are just giving up as leaders in this country and in our military. According to Special Inspector General John Sopko, who was appointed to look into this reconstruction effort in the country of Afghanistan, our country's military has already given up. Sopko literally said the following in this hearing, quote, "Most of the indicators of measuring success are now classified or we don't collect it, so I can't tell you publicly how well a job we're doing on training." He would also tell the Senate hearing the following, quote, "How many Afghan soldiers do we have? We're still trying to figure out how many we are paying for. How many Afghan police are there really? We don't know. This isn't rocket science, but apparently it is all secret classified, and I can't tell you what the results are." Clearly, Sopko was frustrated by what was going on and the things that he found within military leadership. But I get why our leaders have apparently given up. I mean, why wouldn't they, since there's been no clear mission ever in that country? At least maybe since we took out the Taliban from power, allegedly, and then went on the hunt for bin Laden. Now, the bin Laden part is very clear. I think the Taliban part was a little more murky, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But there seems to be something more nefarious at work here. I mean, how else do you take that when we're hiding numbers of Afghanis that were trained, or how many troops that we are paying for? Why are you hiding those numbers? Then on top of it, either you're embarrassed at how low those numbers are and how much of a waste of money this has all been, or it's because you don't want the Afghanistan people to know how many of their fellow people are working with us. After all, the Taliban is still in power, and keep that in mind in a little bit. The fact that they're hiding these numbers behind classified status certainly makes one feel like it would be the former at play. This really is not new news, though, because as we discussed back in December about the Afghanistan Papers, a report that was published by the Washington Post with documentable, provable facts, and sadly, when you're talking about the mainstream media, you've got to have the documents to back up anything that they're actually saying. Yet here we are a few months later, and barely a damn word has been said about the Senate hearing earlier this week, let alone the Afghanistan Papers. Now, I get that this Senate hearing happened on Tuesday, which was the middle of New Hampshire's primary, and Lord knows that was going to take up the 24/7 news cycle, right? But how is it possible that this bit of news, the news that our military leaders have no measure of success or failure, how is that not a thing that's being blown up the rest of the week? How is this a thing that nobody is talking about? All I've heard is crickets from the leftist propaganda media, which I would suspect would be a bad thing considering this is Donald Trump and this is something they could pin on Donald Trump, right? This would be perfect propaganda for them. See, this war is a failure and it's Donald Trump's fault. But we've also heard absolutely nothing. Did Rush Limbaugh cover this? No. Did Sean Hannity cover this? No. Did Glenn Beck cover this? No. Have you heard any conservative media outlet run with this story? No. You know where I got this story from? Reason.com. Libertarian websites. They're the only ones that are covering this trial and the bombshell news that our military is giving up in Afghanistan. This information should piss off every single parent of a military son or daughter. It should piss off every single person that has lost a loved one to what is now a apparently meaningless war. It should have the entire Congress in an absolute uproar. They should be pissed at our military leadership. They should be pissed at the people that are at the highest levels, whether that's Donald Trump, the defense secretary, anybody running this war. But they have ceded so much freaking power to the executive branch, they've basically neutered themselves in this matter, so why should they care? So I ask again, why in the hell are we there in the first place? Why are we still there? There's no clear objective. If there's no model for success, why are our military troops still on the ground? Once upon a time, we had a sort of clear objective, right? We wanted to root the Taliban out of power and then eventually hunt down bin Laden in the process. Luckily, we've succeeded in the latter, but our military was never given the real green light to do exactly what was needed to completely root out the Taliban in that country. So from the very get-go, this was a mission doomed to failure. It was a flawed mission because we didn't know what a win in Afghanistan really was going to look like. We just rushed right in. Was a win to just kick the leadership out of Afghanistan and hunt Osama bin Laden down? Was it to destroy every single last member of the Taliban and then get bin Laden? Was it to make Afghanistan pay the ultimate price for harboring bin Laden and Al-Qaeda, make them hit the reset button on their society, and then get bin Laden too? No one still knows which of those three were the actual objective, and do you see the problem? Now, I can tell you this from talking to friends and family and acquaintances that have been in the military over the last 19 years. They want to kick tires and light fires and kick the living crap out of the enemy. They want to win this war. They know they could win this war if the American military leadership would just let them fight. Let them kill every last member of the Taliban. Go scorched earth against what is, I think, honestly, the most clearly defined enemy we've had in my lifetime. I mean, Iraq, not necessarily the clearly defined enemy. Yes, Saddam Hussein was a bad individual, but what was his real clear present danger to America? Bin Laden was being harbored by the Taliban, and his organization attacked us on 9/11. Real simple. He was a target, and those harboring terrorists were a target as well. That's it. But instead, the military leadership really just wanted to split the baby of rooting out those bad people and then nation building without stopping to ask a key question. If this country that we were invading wanted to, or was even capable of being rebuilt in the Western image, in the democratic image. Because if they would have stopped, what they would have found out with any sort of research is that nation building would have taken one key thing that the military does not do: culturally change a country. It takes cultural change in Afghanistan to make democracy flourish. It would have also either that or taken us just bombing this country back into the Stone Age, and that would have meant civilian casualties unlike a scale we've probably ever seen before, and I don't think anybody wants that, right? Now, the third option could have been maybe giving those civilians a warning to get the hell out, because how do you not also then watch the Taliban, by the way, infiltrate that group of refugees? And we're right back to square one, because I guarantee you the other part of this puzzle would have been then, if they're refugees, we should be taking them in, and we would have just brought the enemy onto our own shores. That's a no-go either. So that is a difficult situation that our military leadership found itself in. I understand that. But what I don't get is then continuing to think that we've got all the answers for a country that has never and will never indicate it wants true, actual Western democracy. Where were the Afghan people just clamoring for that democracy and the rule of Western law before all of this? By and large, they were okay sticking to their tribal regions and then being left the hell alone. Did the people not enjoy the Taliban and their murderous reign? Of course, they sucked then and they suck now. But rooting them out of power was not going to be enough to get that change to happen alone. You needed strong people to take the place, to fight freedom for themselves. They were never going to find those people in existence in Afghanistan. And our failure to recognize that was the biggest failure of all. Yet, 19 years later, we are still there, and we now have the watchdog admitting we've got no idea what success actually looks like. What more do we need to get our asses out of there now? If the government can't define victory and we can't achieve it after 19 years, it's time to come home. Not tomorrow, not 6 months from now. Now. Naturally, Trump is speaking a big game about getting our troops home right in front of us as we speak today. But anybody else, does anybody seem to remember that he promised some 3 years ago to do just that? And do you also find it fishy that he's now suddenly, magically taking this action in the middle of an election year? Anybody else consider it a fail? That we're literally negotiating with the Taliban for a peaceful transition of power? We're basically tucking our tail and saying, we couldn't defeat you, we want out. I consider all of that a failure. I consider it a failure that we were not able to tell the Taliban, you get no power, you are completely neutered. Objective number 1 was getting rid of the Taliban and making sure they've got no power structure left. Objective number 2 was hunting down bin Laden and his merry band of Al-Qaeda misfits. The only one of those two that was actually achieved was objective number 2. Winning certainly would have looked a lot different than the Taliban being a thing that existed in 2020. That much I can tell you. Furthermore, we, as Americans, have spent $64 billion on just rebuilding the Afghanistan military and its police force. And this was the thanks we get. Multiple people shot, hundreds of people in green on blue attacks. The fact that we know what a green on blue attack is should tell you all you need to know. We spent $64 billion and we're going to tuck tail and run because our military leaders have given up on success in Afghanistan? Yet Trump is going to stand on his bully pulpit and watch. His MAGA lovers out there will eat up the fact that the troops are finally coming home. Never mind the fact that if he would have, nothing has changed in the past 3 years on the ground there. Literally nothing. Why now? It's politically expedient because he can remind people that he fulfilled a campaign promise. Bush failed us, Obama certainly failed us, and Trump is failing us right now. Most importantly, the military leadership has failed us in a massive way. And yet, nobody in Congress is calling their asses out on the carpet. Nobody is going to lose commands. Nobody is going to lose commissions. Nobody is going to be made to pay the price for this failure. Oh shucks, we just spent trillions of dollars on a war for the last 19 years. Thousands of people have died. Tens of thousands are wounded. Lives altered forever. Oh, shucky darns. We're just going to leave. We need a serious re-examining of what war really looks like, what winning means in the 21st century. The inability of those at the top to do what it takes to win and then get the hell out amazes me. Even more so, it amazes me that none of them will pay a price.